Rachel.
And I'm Kelly.
And this is What You Should Read,
The podcast where we should all over our books.
And today we have a really fun episode for you. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you might notice things look a little different because Rachel and I are not in our own separate boxes on Zoom. We are in the same room because, I am visiting my family in Maine for the week. And we're at our mom's house. And we have a great episode planned today. We are going to be talking about book to movie or TV adaptations that we did not enjoy. And we have a surprise guest coming as well. So it's a really great conversation. But first, Rachel, what are you reading?
So I am reading Empire of Gold. It is the third book in the City of Brass trilogy. And it just came out last Tuesday. The author is S.A. Chakraborty. So those of you who remember episode 1, I recommended Julia read City of Brass, which is the first one. And so now I have the third one in hand. So I just started it. I'm only a little ways into it, but I'm really excited because I love this trilogy. And that's what I'm reading.
Awesome. Yeah, I still need to read that first one.
Well, now our brother has it because he wants to read it, so you can't borrow mine.
Okay. All right. I'll let him read it first. I think he would really like it.
He'll like it.
Yeah. Kelly, what are you reading?
I am currently in between books right now because I finished Surrender White People by D.L. Hughley, and it's coming out on Tuesday. And I'm going to start Cinderella is Dead by Kaylin Barron, which also comes out Tuesday, but I have not started it yet.
Okay.
And I do have an e-galley of it, but I can't show the title because it just has print. I know, it's not great. It doesn't show the actual cover. Very excited. It's been called Queer Black Girls Overthrow the Patriarchy. And I am down with all of those things.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds great. So I am reading, and I think I talked about How to Be an Anti-Racist on the podcast by Ibram X. Kendi. And I finished that and I really liked it. And now I'm on to Stamped from the Beginning, The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America. So I actually recently joined an online group that we are doing a study of this book. And so every month we're going to have a Zoom meeting where we talk about a different part, and there's 5 or 6 parts to this book, I think 5. And it's really interesting. So the subtitle is The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America, which I think is really interesting because it's not a history of racism or racist acts, right? That's definitely, brought up, but it follows 5 people in American history who either perpetuated racist ideas and policies that shaped American life, or people who resisted those ideas and policies. So it starts with Cotton Mather and the Puritans, and then it goes to Thomas Jefferson and the Founding Fathers, and then William Lloyd Garrison, and then W.E.B. Du Bois and Angela Davis and resistance. And so I'm still on Cotton Mather, and we have our first kind of study group on Tuesday, and I'm really liking it. I'm writing down a lot of notes, but he is so great at weaving, just like in his other book, weaving history into a narrative, right? Which is the best way to learn history is through stories. And he just does that so beautifully. So that's Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi.
That sounds great.
I think we've just renamed this segment from book news to So Did You Hear? And I actually have the best So Did You Hear?
Oh, yay.
HBO has acquired The Vanishing Half, and it's going to be a limited run series. Yay. And according to Deadline, 17 companies were bidding for it, and HBO won. And they apparently paid in the low 7 figures. So I'm so happy for Britt Bennett. She's going to executive produce it. And I'm not even done. Kerry Washington is also developing The Mothers as a movie. So she is roughly 100% for adaptations.
Wow.
I'm so happy.
Do we know who's doing the adaptation for The Vanishing Half?
HBO, but I don't know who the showrunner is. I don't know.
Okay. I'm sure we'll hear Oh,
Yeah.
that's so exciting.
I can't
And
wait.
she's exec producing, so I trust that she's gonna have the best people, because no one's gonna take care of this like she will. So.
And obviously this book is obviously so buzzy right now, but for good reason. I think we've all read it by this point, and it is just wonderful. It's so mesmerizing, and we're going to do a whole episode about it, but read The Vanishing Half if you haven't, because it is the book of the year.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Rachel, what do you have? Good luck top of mind.
So my book news is very exciting, and I don't know how old this is. I just saw it kind of come up on my social media feed, but Jane Austen's like old family home in Bath, England, is now an Airbnb.
What?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna book it right now.
Yeah. You can stay in Jane Austen's old family home and write your novel.
It's on the app Airbnb.
Yeah, that's what the the article said. So we'll post a link in the show notes.
Great.
But I was so tickled when I saw that. I was like, that is the best thing ever, and I really.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know how expensive it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, if it wasn't for COVID right now, I would seriously book my vacation now.
Right
Yep. Okay, so did you hear about this? So have you ever been reading a book and you finish a book and it's amazing, you're like, I need to talk about this with someone right now, but no one else around you has read it, so like you're talking into the air because no one can like gush about it with you? Well, there's an app for that. So I found a new app called Byzance. And basically it's kind of like a reader tracker app like Goodreads, but instead of just like writing your review and then going on your way, as soon as you mark a book as read, it puts you into a chat room for that book where you can talk to other people who also just finished it. And you can either have a free form chat or you can start different topics, like have a discussion board chat for each single book. So what I've been doing is if I read a book and I really want to talk about it, I add it to the app. I don't add it if I don't care to talk about it with anyone, but if I want to like, you know, just squeal about it with people or whatever, I will add it. So I added The Vanishing Half, and sure enough, there were people talking about it. So we've had a couple of back and forths, and I think not a lot of people are on it because I added like how to be an anti-racist, and there was no one in the chat. And so I think that more people need to get on it so that there are more like conversations happening at any given time. So yeah, so that's Byzance. Definitely check out that app.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
All right. Great book news, everybody.
Yeah.
Or did you hear about?
What did you hear?
Oh, but if you do want to, sorry, Rachel. If you do want to talk about it, my friend Lisa has read How to Be an Anti-Racist. I believe she would be delighted to talk about it with every person ever. So definitely talk to her. Yeah.
Perfect. Great. Okay, now we're on to our flagship segment. You know what you should read. So, Julia, why don't you go first today?
Okay, I'm so excited. So I was at my mom's house this week and I was looking through my bookshelves because I do have a bunch of books here that I just never brought with me. And I found one and I said, oh, I don't think Rachel has read this. Kelly, you have read it because I think we read it for book club years ago.
Okay.
This recommendation is specifically for Rachel. So Rachel, you know what you should read?
What?
We need to talk about Kevin.
Yes.
Driver. Okay. So this book, and this is a content warning, I think, for this book because it does deal with a school shooting. And so it can be really tough. There's a lot of really tough content in here, but it is just really, really well written. It's written as an epistolary novel, so it's written in letters. The main character, Eva, writes to her son's father, and her son, you learn about this right up front, her son committed a school shooting. Wow. So he was a school shooter and killed a lot of his classmates. And also, so it goes back into, you know that, but it's going back in time to when she and her husband met and then had kids, and you can tell that Kevin, the boy, is a difficult child from the jump. Just very, very tough to deal with in a lot of ways. So it talks about that and like what is the psychological, things going on, but also the psychology of being a mother and what that's about. And it's just, I love Lionel Shriver. Some of her books are hit or miss, but This one I've read it twice at
Wow.
least. Yes, because I read it for book club, but I also read it years before that. So I think you'll really like it. So we need to talk about Kevin by Lionel Shriver. Here you go. I'm handing it to you right now.
Thank you. I've seen this on the shelf for years, and I think I read the synopsis once years ago and just forgot what it was about. But I'm very excited, and I like reading books in sort of a non-traditional format. It's nice to switch it up a little, and reading something in the form of letters. That sounds really fun.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Kelly, you're up.
Sounds really fun, does it?
Well, the mode, not necessarily the content.
Yeah, the content is like overwhelming.
I'm
and
sure.
Like, oh my gosh, this book, but it is well done.
It's so great.
Yeah.
I hope it's better than 19 Minutes by Jodi P. Cole. I love Jodi P. Cole.
Yeah.
Like, just saying, I love her, but I didn't love that book. That's one of hers I didn't like.
I'm having trouble remembering the details of that one.
Yeah, it's just the school shooter in that book was, he was a bullied, shy kid, and I just didn't love I don't know, maybe it was the pacing of it was just not for me.
Yeah.
Mostly I love her books, but for some reason that one I didn't like.
Okay.
This is not my recommendation, but I would also say The Post-Birthday World by Lionel Shriver.
Yes.
Which is kind of a sliding doors-ish deal.
Okay.
So.
That one's really good. Yep.
All right.
Yeah. I used to have it. I think I might have given it away. It's really good though.
Okay.
I might have it. I'll look.
Yeah.
Library's open again.
Oh, perfect. Support your local library.
Yeah.
But you know what you should read, and this is to both of you.
What?
Love Creekwood by Becky Albertalli. It is a sequel to Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda and Leah on the Offbeat. It is told through emails, like mostly Simon to Bram and Bram to Simon, but also Simon and Leah, and like kind of a group chat with everybody. And it is their first year at college, and they're all in different places. Most of them are in different places.
Wow.
And they're just, going back and forth about their lives, and Simon and Bram missing each other. And it's so short, but it's so great. And I promised my friend Kathy that I would text her reactions as I was reading it. And I could not put the book down, even for 2 seconds, to text her like exclamation points.
Wow.
Wow.
It was so good. I did not want to stop. So I have apologized for breaking my promise, but it's such a great book. It's just sweet and fun, and I loved it very, very much.
Sounds great.
Great.
All right. So you know what you should read?
What?
So this recommendation is definitely for Julia, because I know she hasn't read this, but I don't know if you've read it, Kelly. So let me know. Angels and Demons by Dan Brown.
I haven't read it.
Have you read it, Kelly?
I haven't. I loved it so much. It's my favorite of his.
Right? Same. Okay. So the first book I ever read by Dan Brown was The Da Vinci Code, and I love that book. I've read it a million times. I think I got it for Christmas when I was like 14, and it was one of those books I reread a lot in high school. But Angels and Demons is his first novel in the Robert Langdon series, and like Kelly, I think it's the best one.
Okay.
And so it's set against this backdrop of CERN, so the science company CERN, and they create antimatter and are holding it in these anti-gravity chambers, sort of vacuum chambers, and one of the chambers gets stolen. And the reason that's really bad is because the amount of anti-gravity they actually created was more than has ever been created, and if it were to come in contact with matter, it would create an explosion, like, I don't know, 5 times bigger than an atom bomb.
Wow.
Like,
okay.
super annihilation.
It
We're
sounds very
talking
intense.
level a whole city.
Yeah.
And so the reason why Robert Langdon, the symbologist, gets involved is there are all these symbols that start cropping up that belong to the Illuminati. I know, but it's so good. Okay. And so he helps. So what happens is realize that the canister holding the antimatter is somewhere in Rome or Vatican City. So he has to help them find it before it blows up the entire city. And it's just action-packed from start to finish. There are no boring parts. It is so good.
Okay.
And the movie adaptation is good, which we're going to be talking about movie adaptations. Angels and Demons adaptation is good. Da Vinci Code adaptation is bad. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
You are not wrong.
Okay, great.
Yes. Well, that is it for part 1. So we are going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we are going to talk about books that you should read, not watch the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. All right. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. And this week we are talking about books that have adaptations on movies or on TV shows that aren't so good. Not great. Not ones that we don't like as much. And we have a special guest today with us. This is Lenny. He is my brother and also Rachel's brother.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on today.
Absolutely.
So, Lenny, when I said, hey, you want to be on the podcast, you said that you wanted to talk about, and I quote, books that have been ruined by Hollywood.
Absolutely.
So, can you expand upon that? What did you mean by that?
So, I haven't always been attuned to reading such as you guys have. It took me a lot longer to get into it. But one thing I am is a hype guy. Mm-hmm. So you see a preview for something and it's like, yeah, that's coming out next year. Looks great. What's the story all about? So I'd read it. Mm-hmm. And then I get even more excited only to be let down by Hollywood.
So I see. So the anticipation of the adaptation is what makes you want to read the book in the first place, and then you're let down because it didn't live up to the standards of the book.
Absolutely.
Okay. What do you think, just in general, like what makes a good adaptation versus a bad adaptation?
Time. So Hollywood is completely handicapped when it comes to a movie because people aren't going to sit down for 5 or 6 hours in a movie theater just to watch an adaptation. Trilogies are a good way to go about things. I actually think that having an entire series gives you the ability to flesh out a background story. We can talk about the differences there, but to wrap a whole book up in less than 2 hours leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah, it's a tough call. It's a tough order, I would say, to do that. And that's why I think, like, Rachel and I, we really love, and Kelly as well, really love the BBC version of Pride and Prejudice because it is 6 whole hours for one book, and they're able to basically do a page-by-page reinterpretation of the book. And since it's a book we love so much, it's great to see that on the screen. But if they had left a bunch of stuff out, I would be really dissatisfied. So let's talk about some adaptations that we think didn't work so well. So Lenny, I know you had a few in mind that you wanted to talk about. So what's like your number one, like you read the book, you loved it, and then you saw the adaptation, you were like, this is terrible.
Yeah, most recently was Ready Player One.
Yeah.
So a storyline I had never even heard about. The preview comes out and I'm instantly hooked. So I read the book and then I must have listened to it 2 or 3 times over on tape when I'm driving for work, and I hooked, completely involved in that book. And then the movie comes out and they barely followed the storyline. They didn't really flesh out much of the culture that went on with this, and it really let me down.
I remember being disappointed by the movie as well, and it was a book I enjoyed too. And Kelly, I know you saw it as well. Do you agree with Lenny's assessment?
Well, I loved the book. I read it when it first came out. I was actually lucky enough to get an ARC, which I loaned out and has been lost, which I'm still mad about because the cover was super awesome. And it looked like an old school video game. It was fantastic. It's fun. That's not the point. I mean, it is. I'm a grandmother, but the movie was fine. It just wasn't a good adaptation, and I loved the book so much. I fully agree with Lenny. They did do a pretty good Stephen King reference, so that's okay. But the rest of it, just read the book.
I think we could make the argument for a lot of what we're going to talk about that if there never was a book, the movie would be good or great.
Yeah, if you took it just on its own, and maybe some people who hadn't read the book would have gone to that movie and thought, oh, it was a pretty good movie.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, because they left out, didn't they leave out a lot of like the 80s cultural references?
Yeah, and I don't know if that was a copyright
Right.
infringement,
Could be.
so that kind of held them back too, because
Yeah.
I believe there was a lot of things that they weren't allowed to use in the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because the book had tons of Steven Spielberg references that just didn't make it to
Did
the
he
movie as well.
Oh,
He did.
directed it, and he.
Um,
Oh,
Maybe
he
not.
did. He took all those references out. Like people would try and sneak them in, like have a little stuffed a stuffed shark, for example, for Jaws, and he would find it and he would be like, "No, take that out," because I want to say something snuck past him, but I forget exactly what or where, and he probably found it in post and was like, "Damn it, you guys."
Yeah.
I read that he made a point to make it not about him, but a lot of the book was about his past
Yeah.
works.
Oh, it's so disappointing. It's a great book, and you should read Ready Player One for sure. It's a great book.
I will say though, I don't know that you could do a movie that's full of 80s pop culture references and not reference Spielberg. Like you really couldn't do it and have it be like actually 80s, because
That's such a good point.
you know, like how do you do it and not talk about E.T. or yeah.
So I guess the other thing we could talk about with that movie is, in time constraints being a factor, is they didn't flesh out the actual storyline. It was more about the pop culture references that everyone is going to connect with rather than the actual book, in my mind.
That's true, because with the book, they had time to develop the characters, to develop the central relationship, and to develop his whole backstory and what he was after and his goal to become the winner of this contest. But then they also had all these references to those video games and the books and movies and things that everyone remembers from the 80s. But yeah, with a 2-hour kind of movie, you don't have time to get too deep. So it's almost like they tried to do a little bit of each of those parts of the book, right? They tried to do a little bit of the plot and the character development, and then they tried to do a little bit of the pop culture references, but they ended up doing both kind of just halfway.
Yeah. There was a game in the book where they would take a movie and you would virtually be put into those scenes and you had to reenact that character's role to a T, and if you said something wrong, you would lose points.
Yeah.
Or if you played it out flawlessly, you would win the game. And I thought it very uneasy, or I just was confused that Hollywood wouldn't exploit that more, and they didn't.
Yeah. Again, maybe copyright was a factor. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on to some other adaptations that we want to talk about. Kelly, do you have one that you wanted to mention?
Yes. This is going to be kind of controversial because it's actually a very popular movie, The Shining by Stephen King.
Ooh.
Which, as a horror movie fan, which I am, I very much respect it. It's, you know, it's iconic. I fully get it. I love every reference to it I see, including the one in Ready Player One. But as a movie, it's weird. It's pretentious, and Kubrick plays it like a farce. I don't get it. And the book is so much better. It's just a horrible adaptation, and I do not like it. Dr. Seuss was good though.
I'm not a big, like, I haven't seen the movie a lot, so I guess what is it about it that makes it a bad adaptation?
Okay, so you know the general gist, right? Like, family trapped in hotel, winter comes, ruins everything.
Yeah.
So in the book, Jack Torrance is a good man who's seems to be successfully on top of his alcoholism. He loves his wife, he loves his son, he's trying to be a good man and take care of them. So he takes this job that sounds really horrible because it's the only way that he can earn money to support his family, because he lost his last job by drinking too much and abusing a student. So, I mean, and when I say that, I mean, like, he hit a student. He didn't, like, you know,
Yeah.
He didn't sexually abuse anybody. So in the book, he kind of very slowly loses his mind, and you see it almost happening in real time, a little bit at a time. In the movie, he seems to hate his wife the entire time. He's awful to her the entire time. And he seems like he's 99% crazy already. So there's no real escalation. He starts crazy and goes from there.
Yeah.
And, you know, Jack Nicholson's great, but he's peak Jack Nicholson the entire time.
So they didn't really stay true to the character's whole arc and development.
Right. And I guess nothing but spoilers here. Stephen King also hates it.
Mhm.
And if you ask him to give you more information about why, he says basically in the book, the Overlook burns down. And in the movie, it basically kind of freezes to death. And he's like, that's everything you need to know. Like, my book is fire, my book is passion. The movie is ice and very, like, basically, yeah.
I mean, we should just get Stephen King on the podcast and have
course.
him.
I will work on that.
Yeah. Lenny, have you seen that movie?
The Shining?
The Shining.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I've not read the book.
Oh, okay. So you can't.
Oh,
So this is a good, like,
it's so
question.
good. It's really, really good.
As someone who hasn't read the book, what do you think of the movie?
So when I watched the movie, I wasn't into the horror thriller scene. I should rewatch it because that's kind of my go-to now when it comes to movies.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Anyone have another adaptation they want to talk about?
So I do want to take a moment to talk about the Harry Potter movies because while on their own, I do think they're good movies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they are good adaptations.
Interesting.
Sure.
Especially the fourth one, Goblet of Fire. Any Potterhead will tell you that the Goblet of Fire left out 99% of what was important in the story for, like, extra long weird dance scenes and a dragon fighting thing.
Did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire?
And Dumbledore's interpretation, Michael Gambon's interpretation of Dumbledore was not my favorite.
No.
So
Goblet of Fire was rushed. I mean, that could have been a trilogy.
Yes. It should have been.
Absolutely.
That was probably, I mean, I didn't pay as close attention as you guys did when the books were coming out, but when the Goblet of Fire came out, that was probably one of the biggest releases for the books in the entire series.
Right.
And it was, comparative to the first three, it was much longer.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and while I do enjoy the movies and of course love the series, I feel like we deserve an adaptation of Harry Potter one day that is, yes, maybe like a whole series of episodes per book. You know, just really give us what the fans deserve in a way that doesn't financially benefit J.K. Rowling. But that's another story.
Yeah, I would think a TV series on like Amazon or HBO or somebody that has the, you know, money to do it really well and serve it justice, so that they can really, I mean, every book, even like, I mean, everybody's least favorite book for some reason is Chamber of Secrets. There is so much importance in Chamber of Secrets. Like, there are so many Easter eggs for later in the series.
Sure.
I love that book, actually. Yeah.
I do too, but so many people don't.
I know, it definitely is like the redheaded stepchild of the Harry Potter series. I think someday someone will make a TV series about
Absolutely.
it. It'll happen.
Yeah.
Okay, Lenny, give us another adaptation that you've been thinking about that you didn't love.
So, I want to talk about two different ones. I don't know which one I want to talk about first.
Okay.
But we're talking about series and how it gives you more time. So I guess the first thing we'll talk about is Game of Thrones, and not in. I'm torn with this topic because while they followed the books, it was like the perfect rendition of how a book would be to a movie. It's almost like you could read the book as if it was a script to the show. And it really leads into a discussion about how important writers are. Okay, because as soon as they ran out of predetermined material and they were off on their own, it was rushed. They were, you know, it was very focused on money in cinematography versus storytelling. And that's where a lot of people get very upset with Game of Thrones. So the adaptation was actually good, but when left to their own devices, it flopped in my mind. Some people might disagree with me, but that's my feeling. And you can't rush good story. We've been waiting a long time for Winds of Winter. I know I have. I've read the other books 3 or 4 times over. And I'm okay with waiting. As long as he doesn't like die in a car accident and we never get to read it.
I'm surprised he let them go forward and do the last season without the source material.
Agreed.
I think that I read an article that said the seasons that adhere to the books are so more the tension and the conflict is sociological, and then in the last season the tension and the conflict is more psychological, and that's the difference. That it's all like inwardly. I don't know, I didn't actually watch the last season, so I can't say for sure, but I don't know, maybe there's something to that. Kelly, what do you think?
I haven't read the books. I did see an article that says that his next book is going to come out next year. I will believe it when I see it, because I feel like I've been hearing that for a long time. I
You're just going to read another article next year that it's coming out.
They'll just keep doing that. No, but I think a lot of people felt that way about the last season. Okay, I know you had another one that you were burning to talk about.
So the Hunger Games.
Ooh, I think we're gonna fight about this one.
Okay. So I'm gonna preface this with, if there was never a book series, hands down, some of the best movies to watch, especially if you've got children who are coming into their preteen years, like Gabe. Awesome. We watch those movies with him, and it's great. Great storyline. I just feel like, it's a trilogy, right? But they did 1 to 2 movies per book. It wasn't a whole trilogy per book, so they still didn't have enough time to flesh out all the details. And if we're going to talk about Pan Am and how much goes into the different
districts.
Civilizations. I mean, there's a lot to explore there.
I know, but I still feel like, even though they couldn't get into all the details of how, like, every district and what every district was about, I still felt like the themes of oppression and this, like, dictatorship and rising up and protesting and just, I still feel like that came through. Like, the more important themes came through. Although they do spend, and they do in the book too, there's too much focus on the love triangle. Kelly, do you agree with Lenny that the movie adaptations of Hunger Games are lacking because they had to leave details out?
I would say that the books are better. I don't know that I would say that it's a bad adaptation. And actually, I'm pretty sure my next thing to bring up for poor adaptations is literally every YA dystopian series that isn't the Hunger Games.
Well, let's talk about
like Divergent.
I agree. I don't think Divergent is an adaptation.
So I haven't read the Divergent series.
Okay.
You would like them.
I love them as a movie on their own.
First 2 are great, third book was bad. I said first 2 were great, third book was bad.
The third book wasn't great. I mean, you could just read the first book and be like, oh, that was good.
It's safe to say the first movie is better than the second too.
Sure,
as well.
For sure. The world that she builds in the first book is very compelling. But for Hunger Games, Rachel, what do you think?
Hunger Games, I thought the first movie was a pretty good adaptation. The second one, I don't know. I didn't love the second and third books. I was really engaged during the second book, and I was like, oh, because the whole new Hunger Games dome and everything. I was like, okay. And then the third book, I did not like. So I haven't even seen the fourth movie.
I know a lot of people say that about Mockingjay, that they didn't enjoy it. And I loved it. I loved the whole, like, how the spoiler alert, the battle at the end is another game, right?
Mhm.
Like, it just, I loved how they tied that in.
I will say I didn't hate the ending of that book.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
just like the first 2/3 of the book I felt like were a slog.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like the build-up
Yeah.
to the death of her sister Prim
Yeah.
in the books made a lot more sense, and in the movies left everyone kind of guessing. And if you read the book, you knew exactly what was going on. Like the
You're right about that. Yeah.
District 13 killed her sister
Yeah.
to win the war, and some people in the movie got that. I'm not sure everyone who didn't read the books understood that completely.
That's a really good point. I didn't think of that. It's been a while since I've watched those, so I should reread and do a rewatch and see if I pick up more of those.
That's a good point.
Okay.
Has anybody read the new one? The new,
Battle of Songbirds and Snakes, right?
right, yeah.
Do you think they'll make that one into a movie?
I think if it does well, they probably will, because Hollywood seems to really like young adult movies.
Yeah.
And they usually don't do great. I feel like I've seen most of them, and I love the Hunger Games movies, and I love The Hate U Give, and I feel like most of them just aren't very good. But those ones are.
I will say one book to movie adaptation I did not like was Every Day.
Oh, same.
Yeah.
I don't think the movie was that great. The book I love.
The book was really
But
good.
that's another one where they had to cut out so many different.
Right.
The premise of this book is that the main character's name is A, and A is basically like a spirit that moves from different body to a different body every day. So A wakes up in the body of a different teenager every day and kind of takes over their life for the day, and falls in love with this girl, and so every day is trying to find her, but they have to cut out so many of those days.
Yeah.
You can't show all of them that they talk about in the book.
Right. So the relationship development doesn't have time to really get fleshed out in the movie.
Yep.
How about the time traveler's wife?
Oh, how about it?
So in the movie, they focus solely, I feel like, on the love story.
Yeah.
Where in the book, you get to learn a lot more about what his life was like as a time traveler.
Yeah.
And I feel like that left something missing.
It's true. I loved that book.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think the book is so good, but I think the movie, while I enjoyed watching it, because it's one of my favorite books, I'm like, oh yay, there's it's just I don't think it was nearly as good.
So we're recording today in front of a live audience, our mom, and she just held up a sign with a question that she would like us to pose, which is there a movie that you liked better than the book?
I have a couple answers.
Okay. We could probably do a whole podcast episode on this, but what's like your top?
My top would be, and it's not a movie, it's a TV show, would be The Magicians by Lev Grossman. So it's a trilogy it's a trilogy, and the books are good, don't get me wrong, especially the first one. Yeah, we have the first one
Are we
right
allowed
here.
to hold up? Is there any
Yes.
copyright?
So for those of you who are watching the video and not just listening to it, we are recording at our mom's house. I'm home for the week on vacation, and so yes, we had our props master / mom hand us the book.
Yes.
It's book swap day here. At the house.
And it's funny because the reason I picked up The Magicians was I was told it was an adult Harry Potter, and I mean, it's adults going to school to learn magic, but it's just its own thing, and it's really, really good, and I love all the characters. I think they're great, and the storyline in the first book is really good. The second and third book are good, but they're just like not quite as like, oh my gosh, I gotta keep reading. They're a little bit slower. But the TV series on Sci-Fi, holy cow, so good, and they're all on Netflix. And it's just amazing.
I mean, my answer to this question 2 times over would be Little Women. I love the book Little Women, but I will watch both movie versions, the most recent one and the one with Winona Ryder, over and over again.
Definitely.
Yeah. Do you have an answer?
I honestly, I don't know if I could think, I've seen a lot of movies that I could probably read the book, and I don't know which way I would swing. But for me, the reason I brought the topic up was I'm a hype guy, so I get really excited about movies or shows where I've read the book, and I almost ruin it for myself.
Yeah, I know. And that's like so disappointing when it's a book you love too. I also think sometimes it does matter if you read the book first versus watch the adaptation
True.
first. Because, yeah.
What about you, Kelly?
Yeah.
So I feel like this one is actually kind of cheating because most people don't know it is a book, but Legally Blonde. And I have read the book, so I can say it is better. Yeah.
No idea. I don't even want to read the books because the movie's so perfect.
So perfect.
I mean, it's fine. It's a fine, entertaining book. I think her name is Amanda Brown, the author, but the movies are just so great.
Yeah.
And I love them so much.
I have no idea. But that reminds me, Devil Wears Prada is a great movie.
Oh, yes.
And the book is good too, but the movie is
So much better.
so
Yeah.
much better.
Yeah.
You know, I have small children, so Dr. Seuss adaptations,
Yeah.
because there is no real background story. A lot of it is
Right.
poems.
Cat in the Hat was crazy
Those
though.
are really good.
You liked the Cat in the Hat with Jim
I'm-
Carrey?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm more leaning towards The Grinch
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Horton Hears the Who.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
It's a
Yeah.
good one.
I thought the Cat in the Hat one was a little crazy.
It was pretty.
Yeah.
That is like a fever dream,
Yeah.
which the book is too, I
Yes.
guess.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Okay.
Yeah.
The kids would probably like it. Okay, well, I think we got to wrap this up. Any final thoughts?
No, I want to thank you guys for having me on today.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
us. Hey, so that was our show. Thanks for joining us. Thanks again to our brother Lenny for joining us today for our conversation on book to movie adaptations. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at WYSR_podcast. You can email us at whatyoushouldreadpodcast@gmail.com and follow us on Goodreads.
Yes. And now you know what you should read.
You're welcome.